Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at what's coming up in today's show. Barack Obama says goodbye. The U.S. president gives his last public address from his hometown of Chicago. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is gearing up to take office January 20th. We'll take a closer look at his cabinet picks and their Senate confirmation hearings in Washington. And the drug that killed Prince is turning into a public health nightmare in Canada, where overdoses and deaths from fentanyl are on the rise. I'm Jeannie Godula. Well, we'll start first with our picture of the week. It's outgoing U.S. President Barack Obama wiping away a tear at his farewell address in Chicago. Obama welled up as he was thanking his wife and First Lady Michelle for her years of support. We take a closer look now at the president's tribute to his family this week and some of the more touching moments from his 8 years in office.
Michelle, for the past 25 years, you have not only been my wife and mother of my children, you have been my best friend. You took on a role you didn't ask for, and you made it your own, with grace and with grit and with style and good humor.
It's an emotional farewell from Barack Obama and a tribute from the US president to his First Lady. For 8 years, that's been a hallmark of his time in office, with Michelle Obama too displaying her emotions as she made her own final speech just a few days previously.
Being your First Lady has been the greatest honor of my life, and I hope I've made you proud. Thank you.
Indeed, the First Lady's leaving the White House as popular as when she arrived. Along with her husband, the Obamas have proven quite the power couple. Laid back yet elegant, the US president has never stepped back from promoting his image as a modern head of state, from selfies in the Oval Office to promote his Affordable Care Act, or a trek in Alaska to draw attention to climate change.
Behind me is one of the most visited glaciers in Alaska.
Far from being aloof, the Obamas were always ready to break molds. A dance with the 106-year-old descendant of a slave, overjoyed at seeing a black man in the White House. Or rapping along in a video pushing young people to go to college. Michelle, too, was no shrinking violet when it came to a good cause. She jumped at the chance of a kids' football match to promote the fight against obesity in children. And who could forget the moment the US leader burst into song in tribute for the 9 black victims gunned down at church.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
For his supporters in the US and beyond, far more than his musical talents, the first black US president's message of hope will be missed as much as his charisma, humor, and charm.
Sweet home, Chicago.
Well, with the end of the Obama administration, of course, comes the beginning of President Trump. His inauguration is now just days away, and this week the U.S. Senate began confirmation hearings for his cabinet picks. Here's more now on just who Donald Trump wants on his team.
It's make or break for Team Trump in the Senate. Donald Trump's cabinet picks face grueling confirmation hearings. Charged with vetting the nominees, the Republican-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee can veto the president-elect's choices. Walking out of a meeting with Alibaba CEO Jack Ma, Donald Trump was confident.
Confirmation's going great. I think they'll all pass. I think every nomination will be, they're all at the highest level. Jack was even saying, they are at the absolute highest level. I think they're going to do very well.
One of the most controversial selections is Senator Jeff Sessions to lead the Department of Justice. A staunch conservative, the Alabama senator is opposed to same-sex marriage and abortion. Civil rights activists fear he may fail to protect the rights of minorities. He was rejected for federal judgeship over allegations of racism. Angry outbursts from protesters in Ku Klux Klan hoods disrupted the hearing. Rex Tillerson to Secretary of State came as a surprise to many. The Texan oil mogul has no previous government experience. Tillerson left his post as ExxonMobil CEO weeks ago. He attempted to quell allegations of a conflict of interest with plans to sell almost $250 million worth of his corporate holdings. Tillerson also has close and personal ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Some critics say Trump's administration is getting an easier run than Obama's nominees 8 years earlier. Several appointees are reportedly yet to complete the background checks and ethics clearances required prior to facing the Senate, contrary to the assertions of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Everybody will be properly vetted, as they have been in the past, and I'm hopeful that we'll get up to 6 or 7, particularly the national security team, in place on day one.
In an overlap between Trump's family circle and the Oval Office, his 36-year-old son-in-law Jared Kushner has been appointed to the post of senior advisor to the president. Kushner has skirted ethics laws by choosing to forego his salary while serving in the administration and offloading many of his business assets. However, some say the plan falls short, as Kushner intends to sell those assets to his mother and siblings in a mere reshuffling of the family's empire.
All right, let's now go south of the U.S. border for some other news in brief. In Venezuela, the president is threatening his opponents, saying they will face consequences over their latest efforts to oust him. Nicolas Maduro says he was the victim of an attempted coup. That's after opposition lawmakers, who are in the majority in Venezuela, passed a motion saying the president had effectively abandoned his post by failing to tackle the economic crisis. Thousands of Mexicans turned out in the capital this week to protest a new 20% price hike on gas. The demonstrations came a day after police in Sonora State fought a 3-hour battle to free a border rail crossing that was blocked by protesters there. The anger erupted into violence with several days of looting last week. And a bridge collapse in Colombia killed 11 people this week, including an 18-month-old child. The victims plunged to their deaths when a suspension bridge collapsed and flipped over in the heart of the country. At least 13 more were hurt. Now to Canada, where the painkiller fentanyl is turning into a public health nightmare. Overdoses are skyrocketing, linked to the drug that became infamous after it led to the death of American singer Prince. The epidemic has forced British Columbia to declare a state of sanitary emergency.
24-year-old Mackenzie has to learn how to live again. 6 months ago, he tried to take his own life right here next to Calgary's Bow River.
I was homeless at that time, and I was at the point where I didn't want to exist with the drugs, and I didn't want to exist without them. I got to the point where my life had become shambles. So I came down here and I decided to end it. I didn't want to be alive anymore.
Mackenzie has been addicted to drugs since he was 15 years old. He says it's fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 100 times more powerful than morphine, that nearly killed him.
It's incredibly powerful. You don't get what's called dope sick from cocaine or marijuana, or you get this insane physical desire. You need the drug to operate functionally once you're physically dependent on it.
Fentanyl has become a public health emergency in Canada. Between 2009 and 2014, overdoses skyrocketed from 29 to 894. In Vancouver, 128 people overdosed on the drug last November. And in Calgary, the Dream Center has started providing treatment for fentanyl addicts. This Wednesday, Jordan Rempel, who works at the center, leads a discussion. Just next to him sits Mackenzie, who has started working at the center since he got clean.
At the end of the day, we're not bad people. We're sick.
Alberta's first fentanyl-related overdoses happened in 2015. Since then, overdose rates have increased dramatically.
Witnessing people lose their battle with addiction and people die from specifically fentanyl overdoses, and how often and how regular, I guess it was. Every organization really had to take a step back and look at where do we come together to really start addressing this crisis.
Even the police are overwhelmed by fentanyl, which comes mainly from China and is very difficult to trace. The only option for the moment is to produce internet videos that focus on prevention.
In the 20 years that I've been with the Calgary Police Service, fentanyl certainly is the most deadly drug that we've encountered, and you have to have a comprehensive strategy to deal with it, which looks at two main objectives. How do you restrict supply of the illicit drug, but also how do you lower demand? And to do that, you have to have effective awareness programs, prevention programs.
As police begin to implement this strategy, fentanyl is becoming more pervasive. In December, the first underground fentanyl lab was discovered in Quebec, perhaps the next Canadian region to be hit by the epidemic.
Well, we'll leave you now in California, where harsh storms this week killed one of the most famous trees in America. Fans across the states are mourning the toppling of the 2,000-year-old sequoia that was famous for having a giant hole in its trunk big enough to drive through. The tunnel was carved out in the 1880s to allow tourists to pass through, first with horses and buggies, and later with cars. In more recent years, it was limited to pedestrians, but the giant hole weakened the tree enough for it to be knocked over last Sunday in the storms. We'll leave you with that. That wraps it up for this edition. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time for all the news from north to south.